There is a silent transformation that the world rarely notices. It is not announced with fireworks. It is not celebrated with applause. It does not happen overnight. A girl can grow older, but growing older does not automatically mean she has grown inward. Time passes for everyone. Birthdays come and go. Responsibilities increase. Titles change. But awareness is a choice. It is an awakening. In girlhood, identity is often borrowed. She absorbs the beliefs of her family, the expectations of society, the silent rules about how she should behave, speak, dress, and dream. She learns quickly what brings praise and what brings criticism. Without realizing it, she begins to shape herself according to external reactions. Approval feels like safety. Acceptance feels like love. But awareness begins the moment she pauses and asks, "Is this truly me?" This question is quiet, yet powerful. It disrupts everything that was built on autopilot. Awareness is uncomfortable at first. It forces her to look at the roles she has been playing. The agreeable one, the peacemaker, the overachiever, the silent sufferer. She starts to see patterns in her own behavior. She notices how she says yes when she wants to say no. She notices how she apologizes for taking up space. She notices how she seeks reassurance, even when she knows her worth. This noticing is the beginning of womanhood. Because awareness is not about blaming others. It is about taking responsibility for her inner world. She begins observing her emotions instead of being controlled by them. When anger arises, she does not immediately react. She asks herself, what boundary feels crossed? When sadness appears, she does not label herself weak. She asks, what loss am I grieving? When jealousy surfaces, she does not drown in shame. She asks, what desire within me needs attention? A girl feels emotions intensely, but may not understand them. A woman feels them deeply, but seeks to understand their roots. Awareness also changes how she experiences relationships. In the past, she may have confused attention with affection. She may have mistaken intensity for love. She may have tolerated inconsistency because she feared abandonment. But as awareness grows, clarity grows with it. She begins to recognize red flags without romanticizing them. She understands that chemistry is not compatibility. She learns that someone's potential is not their reality. She stops trying to fix others to feel valuable. This is not bitterness. It is discernment. And discernment only comes through awareness. With awareness, she also examines her fears. Fear of being alone. Fear of disappointing her parents. Fear of choosing the wrong path. Instead of running from fear, she sits with it. She realizes that many of her fears were inherited, passed down unconsciously. She questions them gently. She asks, is this fear protecting me or limiting me? This inner dialogue is maturity. Age can make someone older. Awareness makes someone wise. There are women in their 20s who carry profound awareness, and there are people in their 40s who still operate from unconscious patterns. Womanhood is not measured by years lived, but by layers understood. As awareness deepens, her decisions change. She no longer chooses based solely on how something looks to others. She chooses based on how it feels within her body. Peace becomes her compass. If something disturbs her inner stability repeatedly, she no longer ignores it. She listens. She becomes more intentional with her time, her energy, her words. She understands that where attention goes, life follows. She becomes selective, not out of arrogance, but out of respect for her own capacity. Even her self-talk transforms. The inner critic that once dominated her begins to soften. She catches negative thoughts before they become beliefs. She challenges them. I'm not enough with I am still growing. She replaces must prove myself with I am worthy without performance. Awareness creates space between stimulus and response. In that space, she finds power. Instead of reacting impulsively, she reflects. Instead of seeking immediate validation, she seeks inner alignment. Instead of blaming circumstances, she asks what she can learn. This shift is subtle but profound. It is the moment she stops living unconsciously and starts living deliberately. And once a woman becomes aware of herself, her patterns, her values, her strengths, her wounds. She can no longer pretend not to see. She can no longer shrink to fit narratives that do not honor her truth. She can no longer abandon herself without feeling the cost. Awareness awakens dignity. It awakens self-respect. It awakens responsibility. And from that awakening, her evolution continues, from approval to alignment. In girlhood, approval feels like oxygen. It feels necessary for survival. A smile from others means safety. Praise means belonging. Validation feels like proof of worth. Without even realizing it, she begins to measure herself through external reactions. Am I liked? Am I chosen? Am I admired? Am I enough for them? Her decisions begin to orbit around these questions. She adjusts her tone to be more acceptable. She shrinks her opinions to avoid conflict. She laughs at jokes that make her uncomfortable. She says yes when her body whispers no. She becomes skilled at reading rooms, at sensing moods, at adapting herself to maintain harmony. And she believes this is kindness. She believes this is love. But slowly, exhaustion appears. Because living for approval is living in constant performance. Alignment, on the other hand, is different. Alignment asks a different question. Not, do they approve? But, does this align with who I am? This shift is subtle yet transformative. Alignment requires her to know herself, to understand her values, her boundaries, her non-negotiables. Without self-knowledge, alignment is impossible. So she begins the inner work. She reflects on what truly matters to her. Integrity, peace, respect, honesty. She examines what feels heavy and what feels expansive. She notices that when she chooses approval over truth, something inside her contracts. Her chest tightens. Her voice weakens. There is a quiet resentment that builds, not toward others, but toward herself. And this resentment becomes a teacher. She begins to understand that every time she betrays her own needs to please someone else, she erodes her self-trust, and self-trust is the foundation of womanhood. Alignment means she speaks even when her voice shakes. It means she declines invitations that drain her energy. It means she walks away from environments where she feels unseen. It means she accepts that not everyone will understand her choices. Approval seeks comfort. Alignment seeks truth. There will be moments when alignment feels lonely. When she chooses differently than her friends. When her family questions her path. When society labels her as too much, too ambitious, too independent, too selective. But she learns that discomfort is not danger. It is growth. When she lives in alignment, she feels steady. Even if others disagree, she sleeps peacefully. Even if she disappoints someone, she does not disappoint herself. And this inner stability becomes more valuable than applause. Alignment also transforms her relationships. She no longer enters spaces where she must audition for love. She no longer overextends herself to be chosen. Instead, she shows up authentically and observes who remains. Some will leave, and that is painful. But she realizes that those who only loved the version of her that was convenient were never aligned with her truth. Their departure creates space for connections rooted in mutual respect. Alignment teaches her to trust her intuition. That quiet inner voice that once was ignored now becomes her guide. When something feels wrong, she listens. When something feels right, she moves toward it with courage. She no longer needs constant reassurance because her inner compass is calibrated. This does not mean she becomes rigid. Alignment is not stubbornness. It is flexibility anchored in values. She can adapt, compromise, and grow, but she does not abandon her core. Approval once dictated her identity. Alignment now refines it. She chooses work that reflects her principles. She cultivates friendships that nourish her spirit. She builds routines that support her well-being. She spends time in spaces that inspire her growth. Even her standards evolve. She no longer lowers them to avoid loneliness. She understands that standards are not walls to keep love out. They are filters to protect her peace. There is a quiet confidence that emerges when a woman lives in alignment. It is not loud. It does not demand attention. But it is unmistakable. She walks differently. She speaks with clarity. She does not over explain her boundaries, because she knows who she is becoming. And when choices arise, she no longer asks, will they approve of this? She asks, will I respect myself after this? That question becomes her anchor. And with every aligned decision, her self-trust deepens. Her self-respect strengthens. Her identity solidifies. She no longer performs for acceptance. She lives from authenticity. And in that authenticity, she finds freedom, boundaries as strength. In girlhood, boundaries often feel dangerous. Saying no feels like rejection. Disagreeing feels like disrespect. Creating distance feels like cruelty. So she learns to keep the peace, even at the cost of her own comfort. She tolerates what unsettles her. She allows interruptions, dismissals, small wounds that accumulate quietly. She tells herself it is not a big deal. But the body remembers what the mind tries to minimize. Every time she ignores her discomfort, something inside her weakens. Not visibly, not dramatically, but subtly. Her self-trust erodes. Her voice becomes softer. Her needs become negotiable. Then one day, she feels the weight of it all. The exhaustion of over-giving. The frustration of being misunderstood. The quiet anger of being taken for granted. And she begins to understand that what she once called kindness was often fear. Fear of conflict. Fear of abandonment. Fear of being labeled difficult. Womanhood introduces a new understanding. Boundaries are not walls to push others away. They are lines that protect what is sacred. A boundary says, this is where I end and you begin. It is clarity. At first, setting boundaries feels uncomfortable. Her voice may tremble. Her heart may race. She may over-explain, trying to soften the impact. I'm sorry, but I can't. I hope you understand. I don't want to upset you. She is still learning that her needs do not require apology. With practice, her tone steadies. She realizes that every healthy relationship requires structure. Without boundaries, love becomes enmeshment. Generosity becomes depletion. Patience becomes permission for disrespect. She begins to observe how people respond when she sets limits. Some respect them immediately. Others push back. Some attempt to guilt her. Some test her consistency. And this is where her strength is refined. Because boundaries are not about what she says once. They are about what she enforces repeatedly. When someone crosses a line, she addresses it. Calmly, clearly, without aggression, without drama. She no longer waits for resentment to build before speaking. She no longer expects others to read her mind. She communicates directly. This directness feels powerful. She understands that protecting her energy is her responsibility. Not everyone deserves access to her time, her vulnerability, her emotional labor. She becomes selective with her availability. She understands that saying yes to everything is saying no to herself. Boundaries also reshape her inner world. She sets limits on her own negative self-talk. She refuses to dwell endlessly in self-criticism. She becomes aware of habits that drain her, overworking, overthinking, over-explaining. She creates space for rest without guilt. She permits herself to disconnect when overwhelmed. Strength is no longer loud or confrontational. It is steady and composed. There is a misconception that strong women are harsh. But true strength is calm. It does not shout. It does not humiliate. It simply stands firm. When she sets a boundary, she does not aim to control others. She controls her response. If respect is not given, she adjusts her proximity. She withdraws access instead of engaging in endless arguments. She understands that boundaries without consequences are merely suggestions. This realization changes everything. She no longer tries to convince people to treat her well. She observes how they treat her and decides accordingly. She understands that self-respect must be demonstrated, not demanded. There will be moments of loneliness when she distances herself from familiar dynamics that no longer align with her values. But she learns that temporary loneliness is better than prolonged self-betrayal. Over time, something beautiful happens. Her relationships improve because the people who remain in her life know exactly where they stand. There is clarity. There is mutual respect. There is balance. She gives freely, but not endlessly. She listens, but not at the expense of her own voice. Boundaries teach others how to love her. More importantly, they teach her how to love herself. She begins to feel safer within her own skin. Safer expressing disagreement, safer expressing desire, safer expressing limits. She no longer fears being perceived as too much. She understands that those who are meant for her will not be intimidated by her standards. Her energy shifts from anxious to grounded. She is no longer reactive when tested. She is observant. She is measured. She is clear. And in that clarity, there is dignity. Boundaries are not barriers to connection. They are the foundation of healthy connection. They protect her peace. They protect her time. They protect her emotional well-being. And as she honors her limits consistently, she discovers something profound. Every boundary she sets strengthens her inner spine. Every time she chooses self-respect over approval, she becomes more whole, not harder, but stronger. Pain as a teacher. No one chooses pain willingly. No young girl dreams of heartbreak, betrayal, rejection, or loss. In girlhood, pain feels unfair. It feels personal. It feels like punishment. When something breaks, a friendship, a relationship, a dream, she may interpret it as proof that she is not enough. But womanhood begins when she stops asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and starts asking, "What is this teaching me?" Pain has a way of stripping illusions. The first heartbreak teaches her that love alone is not enough. Effort must be mutual. Respect must be present. Words must match actions. She learns that attachment can blind her intuition. She remembers the moments she ignored red flags because she wanted the story to work. And in that remembering, discernment is born. Betrayal teaches her about boundaries. It teaches her that trust is sacred and must be earned slowly. It reveals where she overextended herself, where she gave access without observation. Instead of hardening her heart, she learns to strengthen her standards. Rejection teaches her that not everything lost is meant to be kept. Opportunities that close, people who walk away, paths that dissolve, they redirect her. At first, rejection stings. It bruises the ego. But over time, she begins to see that redirection is protection. What leaves creates space for what aligns. Failure teaches her humility and resilience. When she tries and falls short, she confronts her limitations. She sees where preparation was lacking, where fear interfered, where doubt whispered too loudly. Instead of collapsing into shame, she studies herself. She refines. She grows stronger through repetition and discipline. Pain also introduces her to her own depth. Until she has suffered, she may not know the strength of her endurance. When she survives something that once felt unbearable, her self-image shifts. She begins to trust her capacity to handle difficulty. The storms no longer frighten her in the same way, because she has already stood in heavy rain and remained standing. There is a quiet power that comes from surviving what you thought would break you. Pain slows her down. It forces reflection. It demands stillness. In moments of loss, distractions lose their appeal. She sits alone with her thoughts. She confronts her patterns. She examines her choices. She sees clearly what she once avoided. This clarity is uncomfortable, but transformative. She realizes that some of her suffering came from ignoring her intuition. Some came from repeating cycles. Some came from loving without self-love. Pain exposes these patterns without mercy. But if she is willing to look honestly, pain becomes instruction rather than punishment. She begins to respond differently. Instead of numbing herself with distractions, she processes her emotions. She allows herself to grieve fully. She cries without shame. She writes. She reflects. She seeks understanding rather than escape. In doing so, she builds emotional discipline. Emotional discipline does not mean suppressing feelings. It means feeling without losing control. It means choosing not to send a message when anger peaks. It means not making permanent decisions in temporary emotions. It means sitting with discomfort until clarity returns. Pain teaches patience. It teaches empathy. Having suffered, she becomes more compassionate toward others. She listens more deeply. She judges less quickly. She understands that everyone carries invisible battles. Her softness returns, but now it is informed softness, not naive, but wise. Pain also reveals what truly matters. Superficial concerns fade when she faces real loss. She stops chasing validation that once seemed important. She prioritizes meaningful relationships. She values peace over drama. She understands the fragility of time. There are scars, yes, but scars are evidence of healing. She no longer views pain as an enemy to avoid at all costs. She sees it as a messenger. When something hurts, she asks why. When something ends, she asks what must begin. When something breaks, she asks what within her needs rebuilding. This perspective changes her posture in life. She does not crumble at the first sign of difficulty. She does not assume that struggle means failure. She understands that growth often feels like discomfort before it feels like strength. Pain refines her ego. It softens her arrogance. It deepens her humility. It teaches her that control is limited, but response is powerful. Through pain, she becomes more conscious, more grounded, more aware of her own resilience. And slowly, she realizes that every wound carried a lesson. Every tear carried insight. Every ending carried direction. Pain did not arrive to destroy her. It arrived to shape her. Self-definition as power. In girlhood, identity is often handed to her before she has the chance to choose it. She is told who she should be. Good girl, attractive, but not too bold. Ambitious but not intimidating. Kind but not assertive. Strong but still soft enough to be acceptable. Labels surround her long before she understands herself. And at first, she wears them, because belonging feels safer than questioning. She adjusts her personality to fit expectations. She studies what earns approval. She mirrors what is celebrated. Slowly, she builds a version of herself shaped by outside voices. She may achieve success, attention, even admiration, yet feel strangely disconnected inside. That disconnection is the beginning of awakening. Self-definition begins when she asks, "Who am I when no one is watching?" It is a question that requires courage, because when she removes external validation, she must face her raw self, her fears, her desires, her contradictions. She must separate what she genuinely loves from what she was taught to pursue. This process is not loud. It is quiet excavation. She begins to examine her beliefs. Which ones are truly hers? Which ones were inherited? She challenges narratives about beauty, success, relationships, and worth. She realizes that many standards she tried to meet were never aligned with her authentic self. And so she begins rewriting. Self-definition is not rebellion for the sake of rebellion. It is clarity for the sake of integrity. She defines what success means to her. Not what impresses others, but what fulfills her. For some, it may be career achievement. For others, it may be creative freedom, meaningful relationships, or inner peace. The key is that the definition is chosen, not imposed. She defines what love means to her, not based on movies or societal pressure, but based on respect, reciprocity, and emotional safety. She refuses to shrink her standards to avoid loneliness. She defines beauty on her own terms. It is no longer about comparison. It becomes about presence, health, and authenticity. She stops chasing perfection and begins honoring individuality. This act of defining herself builds inner authority. When criticism comes, and it will, she listens without collapsing. She evaluates feedback without automatically accepting it as truth. Because she knows who she is. She has taken time to understand her values. And when values are clear, external opinions lose their power to destabilize. Self-definition also requires releasing roles that no longer fit. The people pleaser, the rescuer, the silent accommodator. These roles once felt necessary. They once felt protective. But now they feel limiting. Letting them go can be uncomfortable. Others may resist the change. They may say she has changed. And she has. Growth always looks like change to those who benefited from your old boundaries. But she remains steady, because when a woman defines herself, she no longer negotiates her identity for acceptance. She no longer edits her personality to remain digestible. She understands that authenticity may cost her certain connections, but it will attract aligned ones. Self-definition brings consistency. Her words match her actions. Her standards match her behavior. She does not preach boundaries while tolerating disrespect. She does not claim confidence while constantly seeking reassurance. She aligns her internal truth with her external life. There is power in that coherence. She becomes less reactive to trends, less influenced by comparison, less shaken by temporary opinions. She moves with intention. She speaks with clarity. She dresses, works, loves, and rests in ways that feel authentic. Even her mistakes become part of her identity, not sources of shame, but sources of growth. She owns her past without allowing it to define her future. She understands that self-definition is not static. It evolves as she evolves. She gives herself permission to change her mind, to outgrow old dreams, to pivot directions, because defining herself does not mean trapping herself in rigid identity. It means consciously choosing who she is becoming. This choice is power. Not power over others, power over her own narrative. When she defines herself, she cannot be easily manipulated. Guilt loses its grip. Fear of judgment weakens. She does not need to dominate rooms to feel significant. Her confidence is internal. She understands that identity is not something to chase. It is something to cultivate deliberately. And once a woman stands firmly in self-definition, she becomes grounded in a way that is unshakable. She is no longer asking the world who she should be. She is telling the world who she is. And so, the evolution from girlhood to womanhood is not measured by age, appearances, or external accolades. It is measured by awareness, by the courage to seek alignment over approval, by the strength found in boundaries, by the lessons learned through pain, and by the power of defining oneself. A woman who has walked this path carries a quiet authority. She does not demand respect. She embodies it. She does not seek validation. She honors her own truth. She does not chase love. She radiates it in its purest form. This journey is not easy. It is often lonely. It requires shedding illusions, confronting fears, and choosing authenticity over comfort. Yet in every moment of struggle, she discovers her resilience, her wisdom, and her depth. To become a woman is to awaken fully to one's own life. It is to live deliberately, to love consciously, and to stand firmly in the power of your own truth. And when she does, the world can no longer define her because she has already defined herself. She has evolved. She has arrived. She is woman.